Welcome back to Domestic Dad, Cleaning Up the Mess. Today's episode is raw, real, and deeply redemptive. It's a story about addiction, abuse, and shame. But even more so, it's about transformation, healing, and the relentless love of a God who never gave up. Joining me today is Jason Hauserman. Jason's journey began in a home marked by trauma, violence, addiction, secrets, and survival. By the time he was a teenager, he was using needles, chasing approval, and spiraling fast. He nearly lost everything: his health, his freedom, even his life in a head-on collision at 75 miles an hour with a semi. But somehow, that wreck didn't end him. It woke him up. In this episode, we talk about generational trauma, the power of manipulation and shame, and the long road from meth addiction to mentorship. Jason opens up about the prison sentence that saved him, the faith that reshaped him, and the daily surrender that keeps him grounded. We talk about harm reduction, hard truths, and how God shows up even when we don't think we're worth saving. If you've ever wondered whether change is possible, or if you felt like you've messed up too much to matter, this conversation will remind you that God still redeems broken stories. Jason doesn't just talk about recovery. He lives it, one hard-earned day at a time. So take a deep breath, open your heart, and lean in. This one's heavy, but it's holy. Grab a mop, because today we're cleaning up the mess.
Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to take a moment to let you guys know that Domestic Dad Project is more than just a podcast. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping fathers navigate sobriety, parenting, and personal growth. Our mission is to provide support, resources, and community for dads who want to break cycles, rebuild lives, and become the men their families need. If you'd like to support our work and help us continue to reach more fathers in need, consider donating at domesticdadproject.com. Every contribution helps us expand our programs and change more lives. So just wanted to thank you guys in advance for being part of this mission. Now, let's get into the episode. Has life gotten off track? Are you looking for some inspiration to be a better dad? People say all the time, I'd die for my kids. Okay, but would you live for them? Actually live? Get yourself healthy? Make better choices? Eliminate distractions? Would you lead them more intentionally? Would you get sober? Take better care of yourself, physically and mentally. You'd only have to die once. Your kids don't need you to die for them. They need you to live. Have you thought about getting sober, but you just didn't know where to start? If so, welcome to the Domestic Dad Podcast, your go-to destination for candid discussions on journeys into sobriety, parenting, and personal growth. I'm Nick Barnett, founder of the Domestic Dad Project. I've been a dad since I was 18 years old. I'm also a trauma survivor, an alcoholic, divorced, happily remarried, hardworking, humbled by life, domestic dad. On this podcast, you'll find interviews with people who have walked that path, including myself, coaches, mentors, and pastors who can help guide you on your journey. You're going to need resources and inspiration. You can find that here. This is the community for you to lean into, so you can start living life as a domestic dad. So let's grab a mop and start cleaning up the mess. That was a good clap.
Yeah, you need one of those. That guy in the movies.
Okay, Jason Hauserman, what's going on?
Not much, man. I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah,
glad to be able to sit and talk with you.
Yeah, thanks for blessing the Domestic Dad Podcast, man. I've been after you for a while. We actually met in C-car training.
Yep.
Yeah.
Peer recovery coaching.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been what? 2 years ago?
I bet it was.
It's been a while, yeah.
It's been a while, man. But you left a lasting impact on me. Your knowledge of what's going on inside the sober community, obviously because of like what you do for a living.
Right.
And the way that you spoke about being a human, I think is what struck me the most, what enticed me the most. That was pretty cool. So
Yeah, man. So when we do these podcasts, I always start with a question, right? And it's and it goes back to where you came from,
Right.
Because I think it's necessary for people to understand who you are and where you came from, to understand your journey.
Yeah.
So, what was childhood like for you, Jason?
Well, I kind of adhere to the fact, like, now that, like, my memories of what things were, maybe not always what they were, but I had like a real bad childhood as far as what my recollection was, right? I had a father who was in and out of addiction, in and out of alcoholism, and he was very abusive physically, emotionally, and sexually to myself and to my mom. And my mom had an addiction, and it was my dad. She also had a very low ideal of what she was capable of. A lot of growing up, when it was to a point where she should have left my father, it was like, I don't know if I can raise two boys on my own. And the reality of the situation is she was basically raising three of us at that point on her own. I was raised around a lot of people who were the biker type.
Yeah.
A lot of tattoos, leather, people with the names like Trash or Long Tall. They would call them by their last name, Fox or Mushroom. You know what I mean? Like, I never really knew anything other than, that. And there wasn't a lot of like excessive physical abuse, right? But there was that feeling of I didn't belong. There was a lot of drinking and smoking of pot, and whether my parents were okay with that when it was just me around, right, or me and my brother, a lot of the other adults weren't comfortable. So it was a lot of go to your room, stay in your room, don't come out.
Yeah.
We have friends over.
They wanted to at least try to segregate you from it.
Right.
Yeah. We don't want you to see us at our worst.
Yeah. When they had some ideal that it was like, wrong, I'm sure. And I truly believe, like, as I've progressed through my recovery journey, that if people knew better, they would do better. Right.
Yeah.
So I have that kind of grace with my parents. Like, my dad ran away when he was like 15 and like hitchhiked in semi trucks and was sexually abused and tossed in ditches and all sorts of stuff. Like, he didn't have an easy life, and his parents were way worse than what I had. So, you pass down that generational stuff, right? I had a really vivid account of like, I want to be in the room with the adults. I want to do what the adults are doing. And because I'm not able to, I'm being a part of, I'm different than, I'm not good enough. I remember when I was like really young, it's one of the first memories I have. And I swear, I thought my parents were having like a birthday party without us. We had went over to another family's house, and I was in the room with their daughter and my brother. And, we snuck out into the hallway, and her dad had gotten like a 50-gallon nitrous oxide tank, and they were blowing up balloons with laughing gas, and they were, hitting the balloons. But in my child mind, it was like, they're having a party without us, and why aren't we invited? And like, that was like my,
you didn't
early
see the
thought
crime
process.
In any of that. You didn't see the wrongdoing in any of that.
They were having a good time, and we weren't
laughing.
good enough to be there. Yeah, it was hard, man. My dad was in and out of treatment centers. One of and I'll never forget their names. I forget a lot of people's names. I forget a lot of stuff. And I tell people all the time when they come up to me and try to talk to me, like, I've done a lot of drugs, my memory's not what it is.
Please forgive me.
Yeah. I'm sure that what you just told me as a story happened. I remember being there. I just don't remember you being there, Yeah. But Jake and Wilma Mayman in second grade came in, and they used to read books to us, and they invited us to like a Halloween fun house at the church that they went to. And it was the first time I had ever heard about God or Jesus. And I came home and I was like, I was saved. And I just had this ideal that like at that point that God was like, when we talked about it, like a genie in a bottle.
Yeah.
Like anytime things got bad, I would pray, and I'm like, please take me out of this situation, or please make Dad do this, or please, like, this is a bad situation I don't want to be in. Make it go away, And I never visually saw my dad hit my mom. It was always after we were in bed, but I heard a lot of really violent altercations between my parents and saw the aftermath on my mom's face or body. So it was difficult.
Yeah.
But my disease was there, like way before I used drugs. Like I would play the victim and I would make bad situations worse, and I would think that I wasn't good enough or I was apart from way before I used drugs, you know.
Yeah, that not enoughness getting instilled into a child is an adverse childhood experience all within itself.
Right.
Yeah.
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 It was a challenge.
Yeah.
And like just adapting that belief system about myself, you know.
As you grew up and like got in the community with other kids, how did those things play into your life?
Yeah, I had a pretty stacked deck. My mom worked at a daycare center.
Okay.
When I was before, like pre-kindergarten. So being a lower class family, she couldn't afford daycare, but she worked at a daycare.
Yeah.
So I spent all day, 5 days a week in a daycare. And my birthday's August 9th. So I don't know, you got kids, so you know the cutoffs, right? Like I was 5 when I started kindergarten, and I knew my address. I could count to 10. I knew all my colors. I knew how to read at a first or second grade level. And I was a little ginger, freckle face, bright orange hair, loudmouth, in your face kid, and was completely bored with school right off the bat. I remember my next door neighbor, Nathan. He was my friend all through grade school and high school. The very first time I ever got in trouble, we dropped a Hot Wheels car in the old radiator heaters and seized up the fan in it in kindergarten when I should have been paying attention. And I think at some point they had discussed skipping me to the first or second grade because I was that much, but I was already younger than everybody and smaller than everybody. And my parents thought that it was probably a bad idea to further separate me from my age group.
Yeah.
But I painted a target. You know, a lot of what I say, I think about it in my recovery mind, and I'm like, man, I painted a target on my back a lot of times for the teachers and for the other students. You know, I was always loud and in their face. I wanted attention so bad. Look at me, look at me, look at me.
Yeah, because you didn't get that from other adults in your life. So what is it about me that you're not giving me the attention? And if you don't give it to me, I'm going to go out and get it from you.
Right. Well, and the teachers were just trying to do their job. And I was like the most disruptive and they couldn't, you know, all the way through elementary school, they couldn't hold me back because I was just enough advanced past what they were trying to teach that if the grading scale was based on test scores, which most of elementary is, it was like I was passing classes despite my behavior, even getting sent to the principal's office, having my parents being called in all the time.
Yeah. And how did your parents respond to that kind of stuff?
To the school with aggression.
Okay.
To me at home with aggression.
Yeah.
Like they always took my side to the principals and the teachers, even when I was like blatantly in the wrong. They were so like, you know, and I think my mom's big thing was my dad had struggled with addiction with meth, and she was not going to put me on ADHD meds.
Yeah.
I was just a kid being a kid, and it was the school's fault for not challenging me. And, you know, that just further accentuated my like victim mentality. Like it became easier for me to be a victim in these situations because the people who were coming to defend me were saying like, it's your guys' fault. It's not his fault. You should do better, you know?
So it took the pressure completely off you, and you were able to say, I'm a victim of not only the teachers, but also my parents.
Yeah.
Because they won't give me the help that I need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and, you know, there was a point where, I don't know if Area 7 is still a thing, or I just remember having Cheryl McCullough. I can remember her name too. Cheryl McCullough. She was my Area 7 social worker all through elementary, junior high, and even high school. Right. And they had suggested different kinds of psychiatric treatment and stuff like that. But I was always like pre-programmed by my parents before I went into situations like that to only disclose the more positive things. Like if you tell them that these things are going on at home, you'll be put in a foster care. So don't tell them that dad is using or abusing. Don't tell them that other like drug deals are going on at the house. And my mom was never into hard drugs like that. I mean, she was before I was born in Texas. She was really into coke, but my whole childhood, it was just weed and alcohol, and she never struggled with any kind of. The biggest repercussion she had was my dad and his inability to control his use, his stopping, and his behaviors, like his destructive behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So they taught you how to lie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Well, you know, Dare. You remember Dare?
Of course I remember Dare.
Yeah. That was one of the big ones. You know, and listen, Dare does the same thing. Like, I'm not going to say like they're the good guys and my parents are the bad guys, because my parents were telling me, don't tell them. They're lying to you. They'll take you away. Right. And Dare's saying, if you love your family, you'll tell us and we won't do anything. We'll get them help. You know what I mean? So both sides. And I was smart enough to know that like, these are both fallacies. These are falsehoods, you know? And I played on that. I was smart enough, or I thought, right? I always thought like I'm smarter than,
the average bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't tell me because I know, but I still fell into those behaviors and those like, I'm just like you said, I'm human. I'm subject to all the same things everyone else is.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's actually really tough because that doesn't equip you well for adult life, right?
Right.
And the repercussions would come later because of that.
Yeah.
When we teach our kids not to be all advice, Dad, but when we teach our kids to lie, when we tell them to cover up our mistakes or our the areas that we fall short as parents to other people, that's telling them to lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It becomes the norm.
Yeah, it becomes
Why is
the
it
norm.
okay for you and not for me?
Yeah, and watch your child lie to you at some point in time.
Yeah.
And how easy it is.
The hypocrisy is,
You can lie to everybody else, but never lie to me.
Right.
You think they're going to, like, that's going to stick?
Right.
No. Yeah. Okay. So as you got older, high school, when did you start using?
So that,
not to like skip way ahead.
No, well, we're still in the same part of the story.
Okay, cool. All right.
My parents had told me, and again, I'm a year younger than everybody. So my 6th grade year, we did Dare. And we had this conversation, right? And part of that conversation of don't tell is they're right. People are going to offer you drugs. And if people offer you drugs, come and let us know. We would rather have you use here with us safe. And this is more my dad. My mom was always really against that thought process, but my dad was like obviously in charge of, if not, I'll be aggressive, right? And
don't mess up.
Yeah.
If you mess up, you should be afraid.
Yeah. Well, and it was like, his ideal was I would rather have him at home using with us. And my addictive personality was already there. Like I was already feeling less than, apart from, I had been for years feeling like, how do I get into this space where everyone's having fun and people pay attention to me? How do I get into this space? And my dad opened the door prior to Dare in 6th grade and said, next year you're going to go into junior high and high school and people are going to offer you drugs. And if they do, you need to not use with them and come home and let us know and we'll keep you safe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in 6th grade, I have this manipulative ideal in my mind that like, come on, junior high.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like the 2nd week of junior high, I came home and lied through my teeth and told my dad that somebody had offered me weed out back of the junior high while we were waiting for the bus. And that I had said no because I remembered what he said. And you said. So
I did what you told me to.
I want to try it.
Yeah,
and
you
it was
created a whole narrative.
Completely fake story to get what I wanted, because it was like how I, remember, I had been being trained to be manipulative to like keep certain things secret, but like, why can't that benefit me to get what I want?
Yeah.
And I was not popular. I was picked on. I was messed with. I was whatever, I was.
So you were just seeking connection in any which way that you could get it.
Yeah. And
if you had to lie in order to get some connection from your father.
Right. Well, and it was always just go away. Children are meant to be seen and not heard. I'm trying to watch the wheel. Like whatever it was, man, go get me something. It was always like predicated on like what I had to offer, like with my father, like what I could do for him, whether I was going to get attention. And it wasn't the same with my mom. My mom was always like, she even still to this day, they're not together, and he has an ideal that she's turned us against him. You know what I mean? And he'll still verbalize that to this day.
That's what the illness will do to you.
Yeah. She's never said she encouraged us for years. Your dad loves you the best way he can. You know, if he knew how to be better, he would treat you guys better. You know, he's still your father. You're going to regret it if you don't try to have a relationship with him. Like for years she did that until we were adults. And then she realized that a lot of what she was saying was probably BS, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe parts of it were true, but she stopped banging her head against that wall. So, you know, I came back home, and I was 12, right? And I remember they had this little Egyptian lockbox. It was like all wood panels, and they would keep all their like leftover, they call it roaches, right? Little leftover joint pieces.
Yeah.
And they would have like an ounce and a half of just roaches in this box. And it was like panels that you slid one way, and then you slid it and you slid it. And I sat, every time they left, I would sit on the bed and I would play with this box. And I would try to figure out how to open it because I knew that that's where it was at. And once they got it open, it was like, I can do it on my own now. Mm-hmm. And I was taking it to school and like telling other kids about it. After we got off the bus, my dad had an old Cheyenne pickup truck with a topper on it. And we would pile 5 or 6 deep in the back of that pickup truck. And we would smoke these little roaches. And all of a sudden, I was popular. Like another layer of my addiction.
Started to get the connection. You started to get the connection that you craved for so long.
People pay attention. They don't pick on me now. They want to know if they can come over and smoke with me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So this whole another layer of like falsehoods was entering my mind. Like, I'm not really popular. People don't really like me yet. You know what I mean? Because I'm still not being like myself, and I'm using this thing, but it gave me a sense of power and control that I didn't have before, you know? And those people that were coming over had all of their own household problems and all of their own addictive behaviors, and were being exposed to the same things and different things than I was. And as I formed like close bonds through that false like belief system that I had, time went on and more things through those people were introduced to me, right? You know,
go on.
Yeah. Well, I was drinking on special occasions with my family by the time I was 15, Memorial Day, Labor Day, I'm not going to sit here and say that I like alcohol. I do not like the taste of alcohol. I do not like the feeling alcohol gives me. It's one of the things that I'm just like, I don't understand why people do that. But if it's going to give me that sense of attention, if it's going to give me that sense of popularity, if people that I want to be around are doing that, I'm going to do it as hard as I do anything else. And I would like get just wasted drunk with my parents on weekends, just like blackout. Like, I remember I think it was Memorial Day weekend. We had a boat and we parked it down at a friend's house on Cottage Row because they had a dock, and we had a 8-person canvas tent set up, and I was like 15.
Yeah.
And I was drinking out of the keg, and I was drinking tall boys, and I was taking shots of vodka and taking Jello shots, and all day long eating pot brownies, smoking joint, just gone.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah.
And the last thing I remember Ben and me, he was a lot older than me, and his brother was even older than us, right? I think he was about 4 or 5 years older than me. We're sitting around the campfire. All of the adults are asleep. We're still being ridiculous. And I'm like, bro, I gotta go to bed. I'm so messed up. And I woke up to my dad just screaming at the top of his lungs. And I had dropped trowel and used the bathroom in the tent, and he had stepped in it. And I got home and I got in the shower, and I'm rinsing sod out of my back end because I had made it outside of the tent to drag my butt in the grass. Like, and I'm that messed up.
Oh my
I'm that messed up. And I was telling, like,
You're 15.
Yeah, I tell you that now in embarrassment and like shock, right? But I was telling people that like as a source of bragging. Like, I went to school and told people I was so messed up. Like, it was the coolest
crab
thing
in
in the
the
world.
tent.
Yeah. My dad almost beat me to death. Like, it was bad. You know what I mean? Like,
and people are probably sitting there like looking at you with eyes of amazement and wonder, like, oh, that's what it's like.
Well, you could see the people that were like, like intrigued. And then like, I think about it now and I'm like, okay, they were much the same like me. They went through addiction and treatments and jails. And then you saw the people who were like really like disgusted by it.
Yeah.
Like very much different what's going on in my head as opposed to some other people's heads.
Yeah.
You know? And girls too, man. Like when I realized like drugs could get me attention from females, alcohol could get me attention from females.
Yeah.
Man, I use that. Like, I think I was 16. So that would have been my junior year of high school. And, I was buying Adderall off of people, 10 of them for $10.
Yeah.
And that was a great deal for them.
Yeah.
And I'd grind them up in a bag and I'd snort them over the weekend. And I would be up all weekend on 10 Adderall.
Wow.
Yeah. From Friday to Monday morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what taking Adderall is like. I mean, I was prescribed that stuff and that was like, that's you're grinding them up and snorting them. That's oh boy. Yeah. That's a wild ride right there.
Yeah. I have figured out early on, like I said, like I could just take tests and pass classes. And my whole junior high and high school was that like my 6th grade year, my 5th grade year, I tested like 98 and 99th percentile in science, reading, and math on the Iowa Test of Basic Skills.
Yeah.
And so I went to like this science camp. It was like rappelling, and we did like these like over the top of like water with logs and stuff. And it was all sorts of different stuff. Figured out how to land a space pod. It was just really cool. And I came into 6th grade with like this idea, like, I'm really smarter than everybody. They put me in Alpha, which was the advanced learning program for the highly abled. And I was a few months into that, and there was a kid that used to pick on me real bad, and he punched me in the face in class. And I said something to the teacher about it, and he said, well, what did you do to deserve it? Maybe if you shut your mouth sometimes that wouldn't have happened.
The teacher said that to you?
Yeah, and I picked up a stapler, and my go-to for adults was to S my D. Like I would say, I knew that really got adults going. I would tell them to, I threw a stapler at him and I went to the principal's office, and his recommendation as my teacher was that I be removed from Alpha as a punishment. Put into
because you're not smart anymore.
Put into the special needs class. It was behavior disability, but they were paired with the people who were like 6th grade reading at a 1st grade level. And I had to do that for 3 hours out of the day. I had to go into that class as punishment. And that was like the start of like, F the system. I'm not doing nothing y'all tell me. I would start fights. And I would get beat up all the time because I was not strong. I was like 90 pounds until 9th grade. Tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was bad.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was bad.
Man. So can I ask you, while you were going through this in childhood, did you ever think that there was something like that was off about you? Did you feel like that, or were you just kind of like at what point did the cruise control wear off and you kind of like started to say, okay, this might not be totally normal?
Right. Well, there was always a paradox. I was almost in my 30s before I was like really fully invested in this is not okay.
Yeah.
You know, but
Same.
there was this paradox that would happen. It was this cyclical ideal system that like all of my life sucks. Everything's so bad. Nobody likes me.
The depression. The mental.
And then I would do the things that would make all of those things more enhanced.
Yeah. So looking at that stages of change over there, there's a point, right, where contemplation becomes preparation, right? And I think that for us, right, for men in general, I truly think, and I would love to get your insights on this, because I truly think there's this like thing that we struggle with, and it's, I'm not an addict.
Right.
I just like to have fun.
Right.
And do I push the envelope a little bit? Sure. But I'm not an addict.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was what it was for me forever. For the longest time, my mom would sit me down and be like, dude, you have a problem.
Right.
My wife would sit me down and say, this is becoming an issue.
Yeah.
Like, it's just becoming an issue. And I don't know, but you need to get it under control. And I'd be like, okay, I'll get it under control. I'll fix this. You know what I mean? But give it a month, give it a week, give it so much time. And I was right back to all like the terrible, like over the top. I'm binge drinking on a Tuesday night, sitting in my living room while my kids are trying to ask me to read books with them.
Yep.
And I'm like, not right now, pal. Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not an addict at the same time. And it's like this thing, you know what I mean? But I think we all struggle with that.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest, like, you don't know that you have a problem. You don't even realize it, but the people around you do that are orbiting you.
Right.
They see the internal combustion happening, and it's like, I just want to shake you and make you realize, what was it like for you?
What was that moment where I realized?
Yeah. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but did you struggle with that? Is that something? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The
I just
only
want to make sure I'm not weird here.
The only problem I had for the longest time was all of you.
Yeah.
Like, you were my problem.
Yeah.
Like, if you'd just leave me alone.
Yeah.
If you just do what I wanted you to do.
Yes.
When I wanted you to do it.
Yep.
How I wanted you to do it.
That type 8 Enneagram.
Yeah.
Like, do it my way.
Right. Right. And my way was so toxic.
Yeah.
My way was self-serving. It was harmful to everyone but myself.
Yeah.
Like, and I had this idea, like, I love this person, or I do this and this and this. And I would list all of the things that I do and just ignore all of the terrible things I was doing.
Yeah.
Like,
We're not gonna talk about that.
externally, I would ignore it. You know, internally, you can't, your spirit does not allow you. And it, like I said, it's so cyclical. I hurt because I use, and I use because I hurt, and I hurt because I use, and I use because I hurt.
Yeah.
And it's like, when do I stop that cycle? And my experience is like, the only time that cycle stops is when an outside traumatic force stops it. Something substantially, like, jarring. I hit a wall. It's like, and I said, I was in treatment, man, but the year I graduated, I started using meth heavily. And
High school.
so I graduated when I was 17, and I had been using the prescription ADHD meds, and realized that I really liked staying up and going fast. Yeah. I really liked the way that extended periods of time made me all right with being a monster. Like, that face is like the best way I could describe it, because inside it made me feel like, and I would feel like I could do anything or say anything or be anyone without any apologies. And I didn't care what anybody thought. I could rob, lie, cheat, steal.
Yeah.
And it didn't affect my spirit immediately.
Yeah.
In that moment. And so by the time I was that summer, I was already using intravenous, so I'm like just turning 18, just before 18, using intravenous.
And what you mean by that, for those that don't understand, that is IV, as in needles.
Yeah, shooting up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like the love of my life. And even like right now, like, I have to be completely honest with myself and what my addiction is. I love and loved that more than anything I've ever loved in my life. It made me feel a way that nothing else ever has or ever did, right? And then I would watch the destruction, just like everything would explode. And there's only so long you can maintain that level of like what I was using, how I was using it for the length of time. I was in my first treatment at 19 in Horizons, and I was forced by my parents, who, by the way, I had manipulated at this point. I'd caught my father using, and I told him like he was going to use with me or I was going to tell mom, you know what I mean? And I saw a friend shooting up, and I bought a bag of needles, and I told my dad, because I knew he was an intravenous drug user. I said, you're going to show me how to do it so I don't hurt myself, because I had watched a few people hurt themselves with it.
Yeah.
And he like broke down and was crying. He's like, what have I done, type of stuff. You know what I mean? And I didn't care. I was like, man, I want to see why you love this more than you've ever loved me. I was manipulating the whole situation. I was just really rotten. Man.
You were doing what your parents taught you to do from a very young age.
Yeah, I get what I want. And I'm going to make the situations as bad as I want because I'm the most important person. You play any video games?
Of course.
I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was telling me how much I've changed. And he was telling me, like I don't act anything like I used to, because we used to use together, and I was rancid to people.
Yeah.
I was selling drugs and making people wait and doing just really dirty things. And I said, the best explanation of it is when I was using, I was the main character, and everybody else was non-player characters.
Yeah.
Like your quests don't matter. Mine's the most important one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just not the case anymore, but yeah, I was in my first treatment at 19 in Horizons, and I believe that I was kicked out of that treatment after a week or two for displaying using tendencies, is what they labeled it as, because I had been using and abusing and acting out for so long that within the 7 or 14 days that I was there, it wasn't a substantial enough a time for me to stop acting in the ways that I was acting. I didn't want to be there. I was court committed by my parents, who I was using with, right? Which made no sense. And that's the home I went back into.
Yeah.
I think the first night I came back home from treatment, all of my friends were there getting high with my parents. Like 3 or 4 of my major friends, the people I was closest to, were there getting high with my parents. And when I came out of the basement, which is where my room was, I was like, oh, you need to go back to bed. And I'm 19 at this time. And my 21-year-old friends are all hanging out with my parents. And I'm being told to go back to bed because I'm supposed to be getting clean.
Yeah.
It was just never a good time. I think I did 8 or 9 treatments through Horizons. I only ever completed 1 successfully. And within 3 weeks, I was back to using again.
Yeah.
Like, treatment was just the start of identifying some problems, and then what do I do from here? And Horizons at the time, and I think even still, is like a 7 to 14 day. What is that? That's being broke. Like, I could go 7 days on my own because I ran out of money. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I just never got any benefit really from treatment centers. You know what I mean? Not long lasting.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to come back to that because I think, what you do today has an impact, right?
Yeah.
And what I found that I do today has an impact. And like I told you before, man, I mean, somebody, just to kind of bolt on to what you just said, treatment centers didn't work for you.
Yeah.
And some people they do work for.
Absolutely.
Some people they work a miracle for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've met guys, I'm very good friends with people who have gone to an inpatient treatment and it worked on the first try.
Yep.
And God bless you.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? God bless you if that's a thing for you.
Right.
You know what I mean? That happened.
Well, the irony of the statement is I work for a treatment center.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, but
the thing is, man, somebody, and I'm just going to share this. The thing I shared with you before, somebody asked me, they said, hey dude, what would it take for you to start using again? And my instant response, and I think this is a normal thing.
Yeah.
Absolute tragedy strikes my family.
Yeah.
I lose one of my kids. I lose my wife. Something really has an impact.
Yeah.
And the person I was talking to was like, no, I think if that happened and you'd been doing all the things that you've done to stay sober so far, that you'd be all right.
That's the key.
He said, the fastest way for you to relapse is to stop doing all the things that you've done to stay sober over time.
Yeah.
So that causes a person to reflect on what it is that they have done to stay sober.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, bro, peer work is what does it for me.
Right.
To stay around other people who are in recovery, to stay in conversations and understand the things that they've been through, to do this podcast right here with guys like you that have been on growth, to hang out with pastors, to hang out with people who are believers, to hang out with my wife.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Like voice of reason.
My voice of reason. Yeah.
Maybe don't make that decision so quick.
Yeah. Exactly. To do that kind of stuff, right? That's what has kept me sober. So to answer the question as to what would get you to relapse faster, it's to stop doing all the things and all the work. Right. It's kind of like going to the gym, right? Yeah. Like sobriety is a muscle.
Yeah.
So I go to the gym and I can remember my first day. I put two 45-pound plates on a bar and I tried to bench press it and I was like, oh gosh, you know, and I thought of myself as a strong dude.
Yeah.
But it was a struggle to get 10 reps up.
Right.
I can throw a couple plates on both sides now and go into the gym and lift that pretty easily. But that's because I'm consistently working out and doing it. Now, if I were to stop working out for a month, it would probably be a struggle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That muscle isn't so hard.
Right.
I was on a work trip a while back, like last week, and I had a friend call me and he goes, hey man, how are you doing? You know, like I know work travel and being out and about, you're in New Orleans. What are you doing? I said, well, I'm sitting here at Cafe Du Monde and I'm having some beignets and I'm going to go walk through Bourbon Street next.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, okay. I'll be praying for you. Are you okay? You know, he was really concerned. And I was like, I appreciate your concern, man.
Yeah.
But I've been lifting this weight for a long time.
Right.
You know what I mean? I've been doing the things that like keep me strong in these moments for a long time.
Yeah.
And you got to do that. You know what I mean? So,
well, you said one of the most important things there is like that small gains are like the most long-term effective, right?
Yeah.
Like I do a disservice to the people that I work with if I don't express how gradual over time things have changed for me, right? Like for me, now we talked about it too. Like sometimes it is just some people get that all of a sudden aha moment and that like desire to use is lifted from them and they're like right on that right path exactly the way they're supposed to be right from the start. And it's like, kudos, man. Like, I don't know what's going on, but I wish that was me. And then I think about it and it's like, no, like my small gains are lasting for me. Like,
yeah.
I know that like this worked. So I keep doing it.
Yep.
Right. And then, you know, the nature of addiction, the disease of addiction that we talk about has nothing to do with my drug use, right? My drug use is not my problem. That was my solution.
Yeah.
That's the only solution I found to what my actual problem was. And my problem was like not feeling good enough, feeling apart from, feeling undeserving of things. And that still exists inside of me, even without the use of drugs. But today, over time, what I do is I find things that are positive to reinforce those feelings that I'm looking for rather than that thing that's destructive.
Yeah.
Right. My life is not perfect. It's not like I didn't just quit. And we talk about like the pink cloud in treatment, right? Like you go through treatment and you have those people that are on there like 30, 60, 90 days. And like my life's so much better. I'm eating and I'm sleeping and I got a job and I'm going to get a car and everything's perfect. And like I do a disservice if I don't tell them to brace themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Life happens. You can lose a job, you can lose your health, you can lose a loved one. Your children may never want to have anything to do with you. Your wife may never come back to you. And all of those things, and you talked about like that tragedy, right? Like, and we talked about the reservation. Like all of those things have to be a reality in my present for me to address whether or not I'm going to get high over them in the future.
Yeah.
Right? Like I have to be honest with myself and say like, I take care of and this is crazy, right? Like not to jump ahead, but like I work for a treatment center, which I had to pass a DHS background check. And I work for the state of Iowa as a CDAC, CCO care provider for my 70-year-old mother, which also required a DHS background check, which is more intense than like a regular background check as a job, right?
Yeah.
And I'm also a felon who's on parole till the year 2030. For possession with intent and all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
Like, so like the belief system that like things can happen and be better. Right. But I still have issues where like my criminal history is a consequence of my actions. Right. And I can't expect just because I feel like I'm doing better that you are going to accept me in whatever facet that I apply for or I'm trying to get at. Like, it's not fair. It's not reality. It's not whatever for me to expect that. Oh, well, I'm a peer recovery coach and I do these things and I haven't used and you should just let me. Like, no, I still have to suffer consequences.
Yeah.
You know, and that's my reality. That's like what happens for me. But like across the board, like you may have hurt your children for 15 or 20 years and they don't forgive you.
Yeah.
And you have to accept that.
And that's, you know, I've talked about this with some guests, man, but the unfortunate thing about addiction is that it's not always you
Right.
that has to suffer the consequences of your actions. It's the people that you love the most and that loved you the most that have to bear those scars,
Yep.
those wounds that may not ever heal,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and I try to draw the correlation for people because I do have a thought process of like God and sin and forgiveness, right? And I try to draw that correlation between like what the 12-step program I'm a part of says and what like the reality of what God is, right? Like we call in the Christian faith those things that are happening, that feeling less than, not good enough, apart from, making those bad decisions. We call that the devil, right?
Yeah.
And in the programs, we call it the disease, right? The same thing. Same thing, different word. And it's more palatable to someone who may have had a trauma in the church, right? That's why we do that in 12 steps, right? But the ideal is like, there is a God, right, of my understanding, right? And that's not saying like, I tell people all the time, well, the doorknob can be my God. It's like, no, the God of your understanding needs to be more powerful than you and able to create positive change in your life.
Yeah.
Right.
There you go.
And if you just call that a higher power, one of the things that I could correlate with my addiction and my recovery is my higher power for so long was that needle. It had the power to make me do things that I wouldn't otherwise do and to change the trajectory of my life against my will.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not a hard concept to think that there are positive forces.
Yeah. It's a paradigm. It's a paradigm shift from something that causes you to do bad things to something that causes you to
absolutely
act positively in a good way.
Creates positive change to yourself and to the people around you.
Yeah.
And, you know, as I've progressed in my recovery, those desires to be wanted, loved, needed, good enough have been surrendered to a healthy point. Like they still creep up on me.
Of course.
I surrender them. And the less I pay attention to those things, the less I'm striving for them, the more I receive them, right? Like in everything, like when I try to take control of something and get what I want out of it, it slips through my hand like water.
Yeah.
Right. As soon as I let go of it, it just flows over me abundantly. Like it's
that's good.
Yeah. It's such we live in a world of paradoxes, man. Yeah. And in our program, it's like you only keep what you have by giving it away. And that's contradictory to anything I've ever known. Like I'm going to keep mine and I'm going to take yours and I'm going to stockpile it and nobody can have any of it. And if you have more than me, I'm going to plot and plan to make it so you don't. You know what I mean? And now it's like, I want to see the people around me flourish and be like, I gain so much from seeing people have successes. Like I was, you know, this person's on the street.
It's inspiring.
A month ago, and now they have an apartment and they're thinking about not using drugs anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
that's inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why we do the show.
Right.
Right. That's why we do this right here.
Yeah.
So not to jump all the way backwards.
It's all good.
But tell me about a time when you were the most messed up.
Oh my gosh. I knew this question was coming because I've watched several of your podcasts and I was like, man, how do I narrow that down?
Yeah.
And I kind of narrowed it down to two. And it was right prior to my first treatment at 19 was the first time. And I was just, it was ridiculous. I had met somebody who was a lot older than me and had told me like, you don't pay for drugs anymore. Like I gave them a chunk of money and they gave me like that plus a substantially large amount more than that. And they said, that's yours. Just come back with enough money to pay for the next stuff. And I'll do that every time. I'll give you what you paid for plus double, you know? And the ideal of like selling drugs became the thing, like, to pay for my habit. Mm-hmm. So I was selling a lot and using a lot. I was using needles. I was using my own dirty needles and sharpening them on like matchbooks to try to keep them sharp. Because if you use them a couple times, they barb up and they tear you up really bad, like really, really bad. And I'm only like 19 at this time. And I was tying off putting a needle in my arm, getting it about halfway, 3/4 of the way pushed in, and then falling out, like just going out. And I'm using anhydrous. I'm using meth, like strong meth, and I'm just falling asleep.
Because you were so exhausted?
At that time, I didn't know why. My parents hadn't heard from me for a few days, and my mom came over to check on me, and I was in one of those stupors. I was in the bed with the belt tied off and the needle in my arm. And I was maybe 100. I'm 6'2", 6'3". I'm 190 pounds at the time. I looked like I'd been punched in both of my eyes. They were like so sunk in and black. I couldn't stay awake. I couldn't breathe. My mom helped carry me down the steps and took me to the emergency room. And this was pretty close to Christmas. I had dug holes in my face so deep that they had to like bandage me up and put gloves on my hands so that I didn't dig at them, because the chemicals coming out of your pores would just eat at them. And then you get that like obsessive compulsive action of like digging at it. Mm-hmm. And I remember like my mom was just sitting in the emergency room crying. And I had pink eye and strep throat. I had a blood infection from using the dirty needles. I was like, and the doctor's coming in and saying things like, if he doesn't stop, he's not going to make it through the week. Like I had mono. It was bad. It was bad. And I remember like I had my mom take me out to smoke a cigarette. Yeah. And I'm just bawling. And I'm telling her I'm done. I'm sorry. I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. If you just get me into treatment, I'll quit. And I'm saying all the right things, right? And part of me is really like believing it, but part of me is still doing that, just get myself out of this trouble. I went back home and I'd been bandaged up and treated, for weeks. And the mono was the big thing. Like, that's why I kept falling asleep. I was just basically dying, right? That was my first, and that's at 19. And I didn't quit using until I was 32 and got arrested and taken to prison. Yeah. But the second one is really, and this is something that has lasting scars. In December 21st of 2017, I fell asleep behind the wheel of a car after weeks of being up and hit a semi head on at 75 miles an hour. And I had used people and things for the weeks prior. I had gotten a job and come back to live with my mom and told her like I was done. I was done, like over and over. And I had worked a few weeks at IHOP, and I was like, all right, I got my first paycheck, and I had somebody pick me up that I shouldn't have been with. And I left, and I told my mom I would be back in a couple hours with the rent. And I shut my phone off, and I was gone for like 2 weeks. And my mom got a phone call from the person I had left with 2 weeks prior and said, your son's in the hospital and he might not live. And when she got there, that person was in the room under the guise of being my mother. She had told the hospital that she was my mother, and so they wouldn't let my actual mother up into the room.
Oh, no.
I had a full knee replacement. The weight-bearing bone in my left leg from my knee to my ankle is replaced. My wrist is fused on the left side, on the inside. I blew out my elbow through the back of my arm, and they fused the elbow, so like and I roll at the shoulder. It doesn't roll over like this. I had 8 or 9 broken ribs. I had broken my nose, my eye socket, my jaw. It was bad. And 3 weeks out of the hospital, I was back to using and selling dope. Oh. Like, I would like to say that those traumas were enough to stop my behaviors. But the shame of like what I had done to my mom too was like really bad. And I'm going to hit you with a God shot here, right? And so my whole life, I didn't meet my grandmother on my mom's side. And my whole life, my mom has said, you're my heart, right? She found out she was pregnant, and she told her mom, and her mom was in the hospital dying at the point in time. And she's like, don't leave me. I can't do it without you. And her mom said, God's giving you someone else to love, right? And the date of my accident is 30 years after the date of my grandma's death. So the shame of that was really heavy on me, right?
Yeah.
Like, I left home, I lied to my mom, I went and did this, and I could have died on the anniversary of her mother's death, right? Like, what am I doing? And the solution wasn't stop. The solution was go at it harder. And I went at it for about 8 months, and I was arrested at about 3:30 in the morning on September 4th in a vehicle that I had gotten from the guy I was getting large quantities of dope from, with a bike and lots of stuff, a whole tattoo shop, an electric bike that was valued at $4,000, jewelry that had been stolen from people's houses. Like, I had a taser hidden in my backpack, and I got charged with like possession with intent, second-degree theft, eluding, possession of a concealed weapon, all sorts of subsequent offenses because I had bags of weed and pills. And I was like, all right, we're going to do this. I know I'm going away for a while, you know.
And that's what sent you to prison?
Yeah, that's what saved my life.
Yeah.
That's what saved my life. I mean, I prayed all the time at that point. End this. Please end this. Please end this. And my request was that God would just let me die. Like, I wasn't praying for God to, like, help me find a way out, because at that point I didn't believe there was a way out.
Yeah.
I was praying for God to, like, I was too chicken to pull the trigger or slip my wrist or any of that stuff. Like, I thought about it a lot, but I had never had attempted anything like that. I was like, I'll just use until I die. Mm-hmm. The way I'm going, something's going to happen. I'm going to get killed. I'm putting myself in situations with really bad people and being really, really negligent with how I speak and act with people and robbing people. And like, it's going to happen, you know? And it was just enough, man. Like, I did run from the cops for several blocks back to my apartment complex, and I was trying to eat as much as I could. And it was still 5.5 grams is what the limit is for the possession with intent charge, and I had 5.9, and I'd probably eaten about 2 grams. Oh,
yeah.
So the first few days in jail was bad.
Yeah.
It was real rough.
Yeah, I bet.
Just gonzo.
Oh, no. Well, God did end that version of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And prison, that date is my clean date. That's the start of my, what do I do now?
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, I say the 12-step program because I like to keep that I'm not the face of, you know what I mean? We have some traditions that fall in place that say that we don't do press or anything like that because, you know, say a month from now I fall off and I'm in a high-speed chase and I've said the name of that 12-step program and now people think like, oh, you know,
yeah.
I don't want to give that program a bad name, but, you know, that was really the start of the recovery, right? Like, I could say that I was clean in prison and that these things happened and that I knew something had to change, and I focused a lot on God. I grew that relationship, but like the recovery, like the understanding of what the disease is and like those small changes and getting around people who are like-minded and understand, like, when I talk about these things, my mom was there for a lot of them. And when I get brutally honest with her about some of the things I did, she still looks at me like I have 3 heads. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I go into a room full of 60 people and I talk about how I want to, like, go back to prison every time I go to Walmart because I want to be aggressive. You know what I mean? And they all just laugh and shake their heads. When I talk about all of the things that I did, which we try not to drug along or do that, but they get it.
Yeah.
They get it. And I don't feel apart from anymore.
Yeah. When you get around people who have gone to battle with addiction,
yeah,
the conversation changes.
Right.
When you sit with warriors, you know, that have gone through, that have been in the worst messes you can imagine in your life, that have lived in the worst messes that you can imagine in your life, that have internally fought for the freedom that you have now, you know. So I love about going to church sometimes, man. It's like church songs hit different when you've been through some shit.
Amazing Grace definitely has some meaning. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, like, where'd you go? Where were you in prison at?
I was at a daycare.
Oh, okay.
That was a fortunate experience, right? I didn't have to, like, be anything other than what I was. I was at a go home camp. It's called Mount Pleasant.
Okay.
And that was a big eye opener too, man. I sat there with people who were I had a minimum mandatory. I got a 25-year sentence. And the way my sentence went down is they ran all of the other minor charges under one docket and then the big one under another one. And they said, okay, you plead guilty or we're going to boxcar them. And boxcar means that on a 25-year sentence with a mandatory, I served 12 and a half years in prison before I start serving the time on the other ones, which were 1s and 5s and 10s. Or you plead guilty and we'll just do the minimum mandatory for the big one, which was 2.5 years, which I didn't know. And I ended up serving 3 years and 7 months during COVID. Like in the middle of, like I went before COVID started, I was there for about a year and then the rest of it was COVID.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was the most horrific part. Like being there and locked down all the time and like, okay.
Yeah. What was that like?
It was, I mean, we were trying to get COVID at one point. I was on a privileged unit because I didn't get reports. I didn't act out. I didn't do anything. And that changed when COVID happened. It became the lockdown unit so like if there's 150 of us on a unit and you test positive for COVID, they lock the whole unit down for 2 weeks. And during that 2 weeks, they test you several times during the week. And if anybody tests positive during that 2 weeks, they start the 2 weeks over. And it was something like 7.5 or 8 months that we were locked in the unit. They brought the food to us and we didn't have cells with like doors. It was like a dorm style. It was an open door, 5-6 men in a room, but you were in that room 24 hours a day. And so I was in a 6-man room and every other day you would all get out, all 6 of you for a half an hour. And that was time enough to get on the kiosk, take a shower and make your phone call. And you had to coordinate it in the room before you went because there's only 2 showers. There's only 3 phones and 2 kiosks. So you had to like, who's showering first, who's kiosking, who's phone calling.
Yeah.
So that you could, and it was 7.5, 8 months of that, just nonstop.
Yeah.
We were like mixing up drinks and making food and eating off each other's floors. We're trying to get sick because once you got sick, you got moved off to another unit, a recovery unit, and there was no testing after that. You just stayed on the recovery unit for 2 weeks, and once you were done with those 2 weeks, you were back in Gen Pop.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like, oh man, I'm losing my mind in here.
Yeah. So sobriety in prison, though, that had to be like the first days of sobriety in prison had to be a little bit challenging.
You know, you think so.
Because I remember what the first days of sobriety were like for me, dude.
Yeah.
And I can break it down. It's kind of like Hell Week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I would equate it to like Hell Month.
Yeah.
Really, because the first week is like it's just complete detox. I can remember like night sweats and vomiting and just in my head being like, dude, if I just had one drink or if I had one something, you know what I mean, can make this all go away for like at least 12 hours. Yeah. You know, I can buy myself 12 hours of just like normal.
Yeah.
If I just had like something. So did you go through any of that stuff?
You know, meth is not the same as far as like withdrawals.
Yeah.
It's a lot of sleeping and eating.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything about the eating. They bring you food when you brought food.
Yeah.
You get to eat when you get to eat. And I was in jail for 3 months before I went to prison. Blackhawk County Jail is like, I would rather do 10 years in prison than 3 months in Blackhawk County.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's a lot of lockdown. It's really cold. There's not a good significant covers. The food is just not, I mean, you get 2 bologna sandwiches every night.
Dude, I did a weekend for an OWI at Blackhawk County Jail, and it sucked.
Try catching a moldy bologna sandwich. You get 3 little meals, and they've got these sandwiches made up for weeks in advance, and you catch a moldy one, and then the guards say eat around it. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it is. Like, you're there because you're supposed to be there. That's the attitude that a lot of them have.
Shitty potato chips.
Yeah. Yeah. You're getting in fights over, like, you playing the card game and trading off your cookies at the meal, and then you don't want to pay up the cookie because you're hungry, and people are getting in fights, and then you're locked down for days. The whole pod's locked down for days.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of withdrawals as far as my drug use went. I had a lot of like regret. Yeah. I had a lot of friends. Wow. I was selling lots of dope at the time.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of people who I had spent a lot of money on and given a lot of drugs to, and had like a girlfriend that I was like paying the rent for her and her brother's apartment and staying there with them. And they just took everything, and they just stopped writing and calling, and they just stopped.
Yeah.
I was in prison for 3 years and 7 months. And the entire time, the only person I talked to was my mom, my brother, and just random people from church that I grew up in that heard that I was there and would send me birthday cards.
Really?
Yeah. People who I hadn't seen in 10 years. I had a lady and I was going through some stuff and I really needed money and I wasn't the person who would call and ask for it. Barbara Bruns. And I still talk to her.
Shout out to Barbara.
Yeah. She just sent me, I was like, where did all this money come from? It was like $350, which is a lot. It was a lot. And I was like, what is this? And then I looked at the sender and then I called my mom and I was like, can you get her number so I can add her to my call list? I could call her. And she told me the most. She said, I woke up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and God just put you on my heart and said to send this money to you, that you needed it. And I don't even remember what the situation was, but it really was in that days before. I was like, I really need this money. Like, I got to get this stuff or do this thing. And like, I don't know how I'm going to get this money. Like, I don't want to ask my mom for it. And it was just out of nowhere. It just came, and I hadn't talked to her since she was like the Sunday school teacher growing up. Like, I hadn't talked to her since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long time.
What did that do for your faith?
You know, it really shocked it into a place where it was like, man, and she's really prophetic, right? She has always been that way. She quotes scripture and she talks about like actually feeling and hearing the voice of God in situations that are like, it's eerie. Like, it gives you goosebumps. You're like, oh my goodness. How do you know that? Well, God told me. I hear people say God told me a lot. And I'm like, okay, you're crazy. And this woman, when she says it, it's like, you're saying specific situations that are true to like what's happening. How do you know that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I you know, when I was in prison, I started doing like a bi-mail seminary classes and stuff like that. And I told you earlier, I got a Dake annotated Bible and was like really studying it. And I was like reading a lot of John Piper and C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis.
Yep.
And C.S. Lewis is heady.
Did C.S. Lewis who did Narnia?
It was, yeah.
Is that C.S. Lewis?
Yeah, and he does another one that's absolutely fabulous. It's I struggle with which is nonfiction. Nonfiction is reality, right? And fiction is make believe.
Make believe, yes.
So I know that's silly, but I've always struggled with that. I don't read a lot, but he did another book called The Screw Tape Letters, and it's like
I've heard of this.
Letters between an overseer in hell,
Yes,
and the demon that's in the person's head, and they're trying to like all of the ways that the devil works in your head to steer you away from what Christ is actually about.
my pastor was talking about that the other day. Pastor Jesse Tink over at PLC was talking about that the other day.
So blessed if you read that book.
Yeah,
like it's so like silly fictional, right? Like, but man, some of the things that they're talking about are so like, if you can make him believe this, then you lead him. And some of them are really like even people in church, like talking about how you can make someone who's regularly going to church and how someone who believes that they have this relationship with Christ, how you can make them sin against what the actual nature of Christ in the Bible is. And it's eye-opening because when they talk about it, you're like, yeah, I've done that, or I've seen people do that. And yeah, I got really into that after that, really into that. When she did that and said what she said, I was like, man, I'm going to just start reading stuff and bettering myself as much as I can, or letting the Holy Spirit really. I had such a close relationship with God when I was in prison, right? Because I was so miserable. I was just like drowning in my own self-pity and like worthlessness, right? And like we talk about having a relationship with God, and when I think about the relationships that I'm really passionate about, I want to be around that person all the time. I want to talk to them and tell them about my day. Like, even if they already know, like, I want to tell them. I want to have that like back and forth. And you know, when we get out here in the world and we get busy with what we're doing, it's easy to like miss out on that with God. And in prison, there was like, from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, I was talking to God every day, all day. You know, help me make a better choice. Help me be different than this. I can't believe what I've done. Like, I know I'm forgiven. Like, let this be the last time. Like, just really anything and everything is game when I'm talking to God. Like, I can be mad at God and I can express that. Job is an example of that in the Bible. Like, I can be angry, you know, but talk to him, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Talking to him is, I tell people this all the time. I'm a dad and I have 4 kids now, which is pretty cool. Just got a new one. Just got a new one. You know, it's like a new. But no, man. What I want most from my kids is for them to talk to me, man. It's more about understanding their perspective on things and telling me not facts, not reciting stories that they've heard or jokes that they've seen on YouTube or explaining why something's funny. It's what happened in your day. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think God wants the same thing from us. Yeah. I think that's what like makes him the most happy is just a line of communication. And whether that's praying and saying, hey, God, I need this, or God, thank you for that. Yeah. You know what I mean? But also, God, here's what I'm going through. Yeah. You know, and when we unpack stuff in our head with him, I truly think that he starts like blessing us and doing things about it, you know?
One gives us real discernment.
Yes.
Right thinking.
Yes.
And that's something that I did not have for a long time.
Dude, there was a, I don't know why I want to bring this up right now, but I'm going to. There was a video that I watched the other day, and it was describing how, like, what we are with God and without God.
Right.
And the example was a glove. Right? So the person was like, here's a glove. The glove was made in the image of a hand. Right. And I was like, okay, yeah. And they're like, just like people were made in the image of God. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's a good correlation. And they said, how useful is the glove without a hand in it?
Right.
And I was like, absolutely worthless. Yeah. Right. You kind of think about that and you're like, well, a glove can't do anything. It can't hold anything up. It can't keep anything warm. It can't protect, you know what I mean? Until the hand goes inside of it. And then it can be worn and it protects the hand and it does work and it's useful, right? And same as what people are with the Holy Spirit. You know, when the Holy Spirit gets inside of you, you become a lot more useful.
Right.
And I thought that was so good, man. Yeah. I thought that was a good, like, you know, but once you let God into your life, you can start doing things for other people.
Well, and the glove has the potential the whole time to be what it was designed to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just needs to be filled with its purpose.
Yes. Yeah. So now that you've let the Holy Spirit into your life while you were in prison and got direction and got pointed into what you want to do, look at what you're doing in the world, bro.
One, you know, and Jake and Wilma are already, they've been gone for many years, but that's where, like, I still today think of, like, if I hadn't been introduced to God at that point, what would my life look like?
Yeah, if that seed wasn't planted.
Yeah. And see, that's where a lot of my understanding and attitude comes from now. Like, I work with people who in the 6 months that I work with them don't really see a lot of change, right?
Yeah.
And I have to listen, I have worked with a few people who have went back out hard, and I have had a few close friends in the last 3 years pass away from fentanyl or opiates, right? And it hits hard, right? But I could plant a seed today that it isn't for me to see, though, right? Like, I don't plant a seed to benefit from the fruit. I plant a seed so that someone sometime can benefit from the fruit.
Yeah.
Right? I have no expectations of what it should look like or when it should happen, because that's not what my story's been. Like, every time I put expectations on God, I'm surprised. And I can draw lines from almost every point in my life to where I'm at now pretty clearly. You know, I had to clear my head of all the drugs, all the nonsense.
Yeah.
And I still struggle. I mean, I heard a lot of your guests talk about pornography and talk about, like, spending or things like that. And there are still a lot of things that I struggle with in my personal life.
Yeah, me
but
too.
there's actual repentance, right? Like, repentance is the changing of your mind first, right? Like, I have to change my mind to align it to what God thinks of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right. My mind tells me that things are okay until I could see specific examples of that behavior not being okay.
Yeah.
Right. And then what do I do about it? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. What's your biggest accomplishment since you got sober?
I think that's the accomplishment, right? I wake up every day and I don't get high. You know, honestly, I'd like to say it's working for the company that I work for. I like to say it would be being in the behavioral health industry and being a recovery coach. None of that was my plan. You know what I mean? Like, that's really the biggest accomplishment. But like, I fought that hard. Like, I got out of prison and I started working at McDonald's. I'm a certified chef. I went to Lake Cordon Bleu Culinary College, and I'm like, I'm never going to have a job. I'm never going to be successful because now I'm a felon with a rap sheet this thick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody's ever going to hire me. And, you know, I had a recovery coach, and they encouraged me. And it was like, I would say one week I was going to do this thing. And by the time we met the next week, I had accomplished it. The entire 6 months, I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. And a lot of that was showing off, right? It was like, I told somebody I'm going to do it. Now I have to do it. And I don't want to come back and not be able to tell them because I need them to like me or want me or whatever it was still going on in my head, right?
Yeah.
And her supervisor had noticed that, like, what are you working on with him? He just does everything. And she's like, I think he'd be a good recovery coach. How long's he got clean? And the prison time was part of my clean time. And she strongly encouraged me to fill out the application. And I'm like, you guys do a DHS background check. You're not going to hire me. She's like, just trust God. Trust the process. Just do it. What are you scared of? Like, you can't pay me enough. It's not going to be this, or I'm going to. And I really did. I took a pay cut. I took a drastic hour cut. I was still working at McDonald's full time. And I was like working there 25 hours a week and slowly transitioning to full time. And the whole process I did not want to do. And I'm thankful every day that I surrendered to, like, okay, what am I afraid of? Why don't I want to do this? You know, it's one of the most fulfilling jobs. And even in people's failure, I learn, right?
Yeah.
I get to learn through, instead of my own failure now, like, which I still have sometimes, but I get to see, like, exactly what the results are if I choose not to live this lifestyle. And I just continue in most of my situations. I'm working with a person right now. They went in the course of 4 months from homeless, calling me in the middle of the night and wanting to go to the emergency room because they were in psychosis from drug use, to having an apartment, having all their furniture and a bed, coming to meetings, calling me every Wednesday and Friday as my home group. And they call me every Wednesday and Friday and they want to come to meetings. They just, you know, I get to talk to them after the meeting when I take them home for about 15 or 20 minutes and just answer questions. How do you guys do this? You got to quit all drugs? Like, everything?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, my head goes every time with this individual to God, give me the words. Every single time, God, give me the words.
What advice would you give somebody who's still on the cusp and doesn't know how to like quit all drugs, right?
Right.
What would you tell them today?
You know, I don't really know sometimes what I would tell somebody. And it's one of those things where I just say, God, give me the words. You don't give yourself a break. You don't have to, like, do everything all at once. And I told this other individual that we were talking about, like, listen, just keep coming. You may not think that you need to quit this or that right now, and that's okay. All you have to do is have a desire. Like, you see that your life isn't what you want it to be, and you have a desire for it to be different. Come around and see what can be done.
Yeah.
And there's so many pathways. We do that in CCAR, and it's one of the things I have to be really mindful of. There's so many pathways. You can go to church, you can come to meetings, you can get involved in small groups, or, you know, get around people who understand you. Get around people who are not using, have lost the desire to use, and have found a new way to live. You know, that's very cliche to the program I'm a part of, but it's been integral to my sustained recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have stopped using, they've lost the desire, and they found a new way to live. And I look at them even still now after years of not using drugs, and there's some things that they have under control that I don't. And I look at that example now. It's less about the using drugs now and more about, like, how do I build my credit? What's the responsible thing to do at a job? How do I not lose my temper with people that I should have patience with?
Yeah.
Like, all of those things that make me feel apart from or different or less than or guilty of in myself. Like, how do I how do I work on those things? Because yeah, through surrender, God changes those things.
There you go.
But surrender is just surrendering my will and submitting to God's will. But in doing that, I still have to take action. Like, there's no shame in being an addict, provided that we're willing to make the effort to do the things to face the dilemma that we're in.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing that kept me sick, is I was so ashamed of who I had been.
Secrets keep you sick, bro.
Absolutely. Bring it to the light. Tell somebody.
Yeah.
Well, and we, as a recovery coach, we help people reduce use or have access to safe use, harm reduction, getting people into Suboxone programs or methadone programs.
So what's the offboarding with like Suboxone and methadone?
Getting people off of it proves to be pretty difficult.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of expertise in it. I do have personal experience with friends and people that are currently trying to come off of Suboxone. I don't know if it's because it's an expensive drug industry that doctors are very hesitant to bring people off of Suboxone. And I don't know if I'm not in their head, so I don't know if it's like because they think the person is more likely to overdose and they don't want them to come off of it. If they come off of it, then they're more likely to die.
Yeah.
Or if it's because it's industry driven by money. But a lot of the experience I've had with a few of the, like 3 or 4 people right now currently trying to come off of it, is their doctors were almost unwilling at first until they advocated for themselves to even take into account coming off of it.
Yeah.
And then they've noted that there's some real hard withdrawal symptoms at the very end, because they do a dose down. They dose you up the same way they dose you down, and that last half microgram, I think, is how they dose it, not milligrams. That last half of a microgram is proving to be difficult for several of the people that I know.
Yeah.
Just their body is like,
not yet.
Yeah. I suggest that if people can do it without it, to do it without it, but I also strongly advocate for the individual's autonomy. Like, it's not my story. It's not my journey.
No, it's theirs.
And I can give you my experience, but I can't tell you what to do or how to do it. Yeah. So
that's good. Any parting words of advice? Anything that you would like the listeners to know?
It works.
Yeah.
You can recover.
Yeah.
Despite what anybody thinks, the stigma that you have for yourself or the stigma that the world puts on you, it is possible. I was from the time I was 17 till 30 years old, 32 when I got arrested, I was a pretty chronic and active heavy meth user. I heard my first treatment, less than 1% of people who ever use meth will ever recover. And if you've used needles, only 1% of that 1% will actually ever recover, sustained recovery. And by definition, sustained recovery is 5 or more years without use. And in September, I'll have 7 years.
So let's go.
Yeah. It's possible. Give yourself a break, show up to the party,
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's support. I mean, you're doing wonderful work with this podcast and everything that you do and the guests that you have on here.
Yeah.
And I really had a blast over the last couple of weeks, just catching up with all of your podcasts and seeing all of the different recovery journeys, because there's no one right pathway.
No.
Find what works for you. Keep doing those things that work for you, and you can be that beacon of hope for other people.
There you go.
Absolutely.
There you go. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. All right, man. That's it.
If you're hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, I want to thank you with all my heart. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps us out. If you have questions about getting sober, parenting, or personal growth, email Nick at domesticdadproject.com with any questions about cleaning up the messes you've made. And if your question is discussion worthy, we'll feature it in an upcoming episode. Don't forget, you can watch any of these videos uncut and unedited, filmed in my studio from our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Domestic Dad Project. Also, please follow us on Facebook or share this episode on your social media. You can also join our community by grabbing some merch. It means the world to me to know that this podcast is making a difference in someone's life. And if this episode inspired you to get sober or simply become a better version of yourself, you can claim your free 60-minute coaching session by visiting www.domesticdadproject.com. Let's continue supporting each other to break the stigma around dads reaching out for help, to get our lives on track while navigating the obstacles of fatherhood. Until next time, keep cleaning up the mess.